Hi guys, happy Monday. Today we're going to start off by looking at homework for tonight, and the beginning of homework is going to be some decimal operations. So we're going to have a division problem, a subtraction problem. There's another division problem, and there's a multiplication problem that we're not going to talk about. But we're going to talk about some of the strategies that we've used in order to answer these questions. Now, when we're dividing or multiplying, one thing that we've talked about in class doing is moving that decimal over to work this problem as with whole numbers. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take, we have 38 and 22 hundredths divided by 7. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move this decimal over 2 times. And remember, when I move a decimal over twice, every time I move it over, I'm multiplying by 10. So if I move it over twice, I've multiplied by 10 twice. And 10 times 10 is 100. So basically what I did to this number was I multiplied by 100, which gives me 3,822 divided by 7. Now at that point, work that problem as whole numbers, and then in the end, your answer is going to be 100 times bigger than it should be. So what you're going to do is you're going to divide by 100. So you're going to move the decimal back twice. So think about using whole numbers in that case, as well as with multiplication, anytime that you're multiplying two decimal numbers together. Now, when we're subtracting, such as this case, here I have 150 minus 8 and 75 hundredths. Remember, one thing that we've talked about with subtraction is starting with the whole numbers. So here my whole number is 150, and here my whole number is 8. So I'm going to start off with just doing 150 minus 8, and then I'm going to add in that decimal piece at the end. And I can add that decimal and 2 zeros for 150. Always with addition and subtraction, start with your whole numbers and then add in the decimals at the end. That's going to make your life a whole lot easier. So think about that with the subtraction. Now, remember, anytime that we're multiplying or dividing by tens, hundreds, or thousands, we can just move the decimal. So when I look at this number 425, you'll notice there isn't a decimal, but it's a whole number, so we know that the decimal goes right here at the end. Now what I'm doing is I'm dividing this number by 1,000. Dividing by 1,000 means my number is going to get smaller. Now remember that dividing by 1,000 is the same thing as dividing by 10 3 times. That means all we're going to do here is we're just going to move the decimal back 1, 2, 3 times, and I have my answer. So that's an even quicker question when we're dividing or multiplying by tens, hundreds, or thousands. Now, the fourth problem, like I said, is going to be a multiplication problem. Think about getting rid of those decimals like we did up here with this division problem, working it as whole numbers, and then going back and moving your decimal back in the end. Let's give that a shot. All right, guys. So the next part of homework is going to ask us to round some numbers. So we'll look at one of those numbers, and then we'll talk about how we can round it. So we're going to be rounding here to the nearest whole number, to the nearest tenth, to the nearest hundredth. Now, the number I'm starting off working with here is 25 and 625 thousandths. Now, when I'm rounding to the nearest whole number, the first thing I'm going to ask myself is, which two whole numbers does this fall between? Well, it falls between 25 and 26. And if we're thinking about what is it closer to, I see the 6 in the tenths place. 6 tenths is more than half because 5 tenths is half. So that tells me that it's actually going to be slightly closer to 26. Now, when I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, I'm going to look at the tenths place. I'm going to look at the digit behind it, which is a 2. The 2 is not more than half, so it's not going to push up that 6. I'm going to keep the 6 there, and then my whole number is going to stay the same. So 25 and 6 tenths. And then when I'm rounding to the nearest hundredth, I'm going to find the hundredths place, which is a 2. I'm going to look in the thousands place. The 5 is half, so it's going to bump this 2 up to 3. then everything else is going to stay the same, and we end up with 25 and 63 hundredths. Now, as you're working through these, think about that and think about the place value that you're working in. When you're working in the whole numbers, you should stop at the whole numbers. When you're working with the tenths, stop at the tenths, and when you're working with the hundredths, stop at the hundredths. That's a good thing. Good thing to remember as you're working through these sorts of questions. Now, there's going to be three numbers to do there. We did one of them for you, so you guys will have to do the other two. All right, that takes us to the problem. Let's read it for you. Right. So it says, Leah decided this past weekend that she was pretty annoyed that there hasn't been a snow day this year. To change this, she decided to buy a snow machine that could be placed outside of the superintendent's house in order to trick him. The machine made 25 and 25 hundredths inches of snow in 5 hours. So the machine made 25 and 25 hundredths inches in 5 hours. If the machine makes the exact same amount of snow each hour, so it makes the same amount each hour. How much will it snow in 14 hours? So how much will it snow in 14 hours? All right. Now, the first thing we know here is we know that in 5 hours, it made 25 and 25 hundredths inches in that 5 hours. And an interesting thing that we know is that it makes the exact same amount every single hour. Now, the problem is we don't know how much it makes every single hour, but we could figure that out given this information. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take 25 and 25 hundredths, and I'm going to divide that by 5, and that's going to give me some number x. Because this is going to tell me how much snow is it making every hour. If it's making the exact same amount every hour, this should tell me how much exactly it will make every hour. Now, the question here wasn't how much will it make every hour. The question is how much will it make in 14 hours, which tells me then whatever this number is, I'm then just going to have to multiply by 14, x times 14, and that's going to give me my final solution of it's going to snow this much in 14 hours. So what we're thinking here is figuring out, well, how much is it snowing per hour or for each hour, and then we can multiply that number by 14. So give that a try. All right, guys, I will see you later in class.